And standing by to bring you the latest from Beirut, Amman, Doha, Washington, D.C., and in Tehran. And that is where we will begin with Ali Hashem live in the Iranian capital. Ali, it wasn't just Ali Larijani who was killed in this strike. Tell us who else was targeted and what the immediate effect is for the transition of power in Iran.
Well, starting from who was killed, Ali Larijani was killed alongside one of his assistants and his son, Murtada, at one strike. The second strike killed the Basij commander. However, with respect to transition, actually, there's no currently, because the election of a new supreme leader, who's now Mujtaba Khamenei, just ended this transition of power, and now there's a new leader, and this new leader is the one who is calling the shots. At least this is in theory. Now, we don't know much about his health. We don't know much about his presence, where he is. But at the end, in theory, he is the one now who is calling the shots, and we saw that in the statement he did last week. Now, with respect to Mr. Larijani was a centric personality within the Iranian establishment. Now, with his killing, there's, of course, a huge gap that's going to emerge here, not only for Iran, not only for the system in Iran, but also for the possibilities of any kind of settlement in the future, or people who can help Iran and its rivals to come down the ladder.
Let's bring in Rory Challands, who is live for us from Jordan's capital, Amman. Rory, because, well, we just recently received word from Iranian state TV of this death. Israel was quick to announce the strike earlier today. Is this part of their strategy? What can you tell us about what officials there are saying?
Well, the strategy that the Israelis have at the moment is to frame these two assassinations, particularly the assassination of Soleimani, as essentially Israel acting on behalf of the people of Iran. And Netanyahu has been urging Iranians to take to the streets, to come out on the eve of a festival that is happening in Iran tonight, and to use this as a way to ignite protests against the regime and to try and bring the regime down. Now, the comments that we've heard from the Israeli officialdom this evening have been that this is a campaign to kill leaders and terminate capabilities. That's what Israel Katz, the defense minister, said. Netanyahu called Larijani the boss of a gang of gangsters running Iran, and that the Soleimani assassination is basically as a kind of can be framed in his role as head of the Basij, and therefore part of the infrastructure that repressed or cracked down on protests in Iran earlier in the year, in January, that he is essentially trying to liberate the Iranian people. That is part of his strategy at the moment, is to destabilize the regime with these ongoing assassinations, to try and effect some sort of regime change, and to basically put the responsibility of that on the people of Iran, saying that now it's your time. We're doing our job, and you can take this opportunity to rise up. Now, that's despite the fact that there must have been many collateral damage, civilians killed in many of these strikes, with strikes going on as we speak against Basij checkpoints in central Tehran, and also the Israelis acknowledging that any uprising from the Iranian people would essentially come with the deaths of many of those people at the hands of the Basij forces.
John Holman is also with us. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. John, we've heard the president say in the last few days that, he's not even sure who's in charge or who there is to talk to. And now that these two senior figures, particularly Ali Larijani, have been assassinated, that is likely going to be more difficult to ascertain. What is the Trump administration's response, and how is it going to navigate this going forward? Do we know yet?
Yeah, we don't know yet. I think you're right there. But we can talk about what he's said already in terms of his plan and negotiating. As you mentioned, he said that he doesn't even know who he's talking to. But he has also mentioned that he said Iran wants to do a deal. Iran itself has denied that, but that they haven't put enough on the table yet. And he's going forward with his military aims. So he's probably going to keep doing that. Of course, for President Trump, the focus right now is on getting access through the Strait of Hormuz for the oil tankers and the vessels, and that's what he's again been talking about throughout Tuesday, castigating his allies that haven't helped him to do that. So that remains a focus for him, and the military options. He's also is still talking about preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, and that seems to be another top priority for him still, although we still haven't heard of what plan there would be to actually do that. All of the military analysts that I've talked to said that that would automatically involve some sort of boots on the ground, whether that's a surgical sort of strike to try and get to that nuclear, the highly enriched uranium that Iran possesses. So those still seem to be the top aims. He didn't seem to be overly knowledgeable about the situation when he was talking about the assassination of Larenjani earlier. He just said, well, one of their top figures appears to be killed. So we'll have to see now when he talks to his officials, and if the United States actually has a response now that that news has actually been confirmed by Iranian state media, and if they've got any more thoughts on it.
Let's go back to Ali Hashem, who is standing by for us in Tehran. Ali, you mentioned this at the end of your last answer, that there's some concern now that with Larenjani gone, the possibility of an off-ramp goes with it. But surely there must also be concern in Iran that whoever steps into these places and fills these shoes is next on the target list as well.
Well, absolutely, they're taking this into consideration, and we've heard this from several officials, including our interview today with Abbas Araghchi, the Iranian foreign minister, who said that there's a conceptual mistake within the United States and the Israeli administrations when they think that killing one person could shatter or could diverge or destroy the system. This couldn't happen, because when they killed the supreme leader, who was centric and who is very important for the system, there's nothing that happened to the system. Now, with respect to the off-ramp, the idea is that there is an analysis now in Tehran that the Israelis are trying to change the chain of command, or replace a chain of command that was made up of some personalities with a different approach, with a personality with hardline approach. Now, you know, after Mr. Larenjani's death, the second in command in the Supreme National Security Council is Saeed Jalili. So the idea is that Israel wants a leadership in Iran that wants to continue the war and not stop the war.
Let's bring John Holman back in Washington, because, John, something else significant that happened in Washington today is for the first time we're seeing the resignation of somebody in the administration, specifically over the war in Iran. Is this a concern for the White House? What is the administration saying?
Well, President Trump brushed it off as not a concern. We'll hear from him in a little bit. But the person in question was Joe Kent. It was the director of the National Counter-Terrorism Center. So he oversaw basically all of the government intelligence on any terror threats within the United States. So I guess a source of concern in that right now that is an important job in the US. President Trump and other officials have been talking about possible Iranian sleeper cells in the United States. But further than that, Joe Kent was a special forces soldier before he joined the administration. He was a Green Beret. His wife was killed in action, so sort of a heroic figure, and someone that was very much in the MAGA, the Make America Great Again part of Trump's power base. He was someone that, for example, said that the January 6th rioters were political prisoners, as he defined them. So this was a loyalist. I'm just going to read you a very short part of his letter. He said, "I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran pose no imminent threat to our nation." So his thoughts on this was that the US shouldn't be involving itself in a foreign conflict, and other people within the MAGA movement, figureheads for it, have said the same. So it could be a problem for President Trump, especially if this conflict continues. Let's hear what he had to say, though, about Joe Kent's resignation.
Well, I read his statement. I always thought he was a nice guy, but I always thought he was weak on security, very weak on security. I didn't know him well, but I thought he seemed like a pretty nice guy. But when I read his statement, I realized that it's a good thing that he's out, because he said that Iran was not a threat. Iran was a threat. Every country realized what a threat Iran was. The question is whether or not they wanted to do something about it.
So there's been other figures as well that reportedly within President Trump's administration that aren't quite in step with him on this conflict, in this campaign against Iran, notably the Vice President, J.D. Vance. When he was asked about it the other day, he sort of accused the reporter and said, "You're trying to drive a wedge between me and the president. I know what you're trying to do." But he's been quite guarded in what he says about it. Also, Tulsi Gabbard, who is actually Joe Kent's boss, the Director of National Intelligence, has been quite guarded in what she's said about the conflict, even when addressing Joe Kent's resignation. But I think those figures, they might not be openly cheerleading for what's happened, but they haven't been unsupportive or come out with a different view. So I think the domino effect, seeing more figures within the administration resign or fall as a result of that, we're definitely very far from seeing that at the moment. Most people seem to be towing the line.
All right, let's go back to Rory Challands, who is in Amman for us. And Rory, when we're talking about these targeted assassinations that happened earlier today in Iran, there still have been strikes continuing into Israel from Iran and Hezbollah. Can you please give us the latest on those strikes? And also, is there concern in Israel that the retaliation for this may be significant?
Well, perhaps that retaliation has already begun, because in the last half an hour, a significant strike has come from Iran towards central Israel. A cluster of munition, there were videos that showed it detonating in the sky and spreading fiery fragments over a wide area. Some of that damage has been reported in the Tel Aviv area. I think we're looking at pictures of that at the moment. There's also damage reported in Jerusalem, Ramat Gan, Bnei Barak, all sites in and around central Israel. 2 people are believed to have been killed in this strike, a man and a woman in their 70s, who initial reports suggest were not in a shelter. Perhaps they were trying to get to a shelter. 5 people lightly injured in the Sharon area. We'll bring you more on that strike as we get it. This is information that's coming in at the moment. But in general, northern Israel is being hit by some 100 rockets a day, or at least having 100 rockets a day fired at it by Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. And Israel is also getting rockets and missiles from Iran. Often those rocket fire from Hezbollah and the missiles from Iran are coordinated with each other. Most of these rockets and missiles are being intercepted, but there are strains being put on the air defense system. And sometimes there's an investigation going on at the moment. It's believed that interceptors cause damage on the ground, as well as the debris from the missiles and the rockets themselves. The investigation going on is about a strike that happened in Nahariya a couple of days ago, in which there was injuries and damage on the ground. But in general, Israel is fighting a war on 2 fronts at the moment. It's fighting against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, and it's also fighting, of course, against Iran. And it does believe, despite the damage on the home front, that it is being successful in both of those missions.
All right, Rory Challands in Amman, Jordan. Ali Hashem in Tehran and John Holman in Washington, D.C. Our thanks to all of you for your reporting on this story.